Greetings, everyone, and welcome to our 16 Days of Activism Healthy Talk. My name is Anushka, Youth Education Coordinator with the Neighbours, Friends, and Families campaign at the Center for Research and Education on Violence Against Women and Children here at Western University. And I will be your moderator for our NFF Youth panel today. We're reminded time and again that the issue of gender-based violence is very real in communities across the world, and that global campaigns like 16 Days are crucial in knowledge dissemination and inspiring action. On this note, I'd like to introduce to you our panelists today, all members of the NFF Youth Advisory Council. Thank you so much for being here today. Let's dive right into our discussion. So, what is the 16 Days of Activism campaign, and what role do advocacy campaigns like this play in eliminating gender-based violence? Why is this campaign required? Sanya, can you give us an overview, please?
Of course. So the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence is an annually held campaign that begins on November 25th, the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and ends December 10th on World Human Rights Day. It is a movement made to raise awareness about gender-based violence and provide opportunities to advocate for voices that are often unheard. Acting on a global level, different voices are amplified through various platforms to share perspectives that call for action. This year specifically is also the 30th anniversary of the campaign, stressing its importance as a long-term project. Advocacy campaigns are important in the elimination of gender-based violence, as they are not only raising awareness, but also making effort to shift narratives and end violence against women. Specifically, NFF is one exemplary project that prioritizes broadcasting key messages in different languages, providing a cross-cultural approach to help educate the public and challenge Western dominant practices. Through this process, the engagement of people from different backgrounds allow our advocacy campaign to reach a wide range of individuals and begin a conversation that can extend the boundaries of Ontario. Overall, this is necessary since activism against these issues calls to break cycles that have been continuing for so long. Oppression is reinforced through various structures in society. Thus, if these systems of injustice are not questioned or acted upon, change that unknown awareness will not be possible.
Thank you so much, Sanya. It surely is an especially important campaign. And in the light of COVID-19 and how that has affected rates of gender-based violence around the world. On the hopeful side, it seems that increasingly women are being empowered to share their stories and feel supported to act against the oppressive structures which are in place. Ella, why do you think the campaign is so important?
I think this campaign is required because by creating a designated period that's recognized worldwide, the whole world is focusing on the same issue at the same time, amplifying the voices that need to be heard. Violence against women and children is not a problem that's just experienced by one country, but instead is experienced worldwide by a variety of cultural, religious, and geographical contexts. 16 Days of Activism brings the whole world together to reflect and think on a collective solution to a problem that's felt deeply worldwide.
You are so right, Ella. The breadth of this issue is so widespread, and the cultural, geographical challenges and barriers that survivors face in different parts of the world are so diverse. It is important to share and centralize stories and resources to increase our understanding of the vast complexities of the issue and work towards solutions that actually take into consideration so many intersecting identities and experiences. Sanya, what do you think we can do to address the cultural barriers to accessing gender-based violence services, especially in reference to intimate partner violence?
Personally, I think it is important to understand how gender is conceptually understood in different cultures before gender-based violence is put into focus. Oftentimes, Western perspectives can be implicit about the definition of gender and the rights associated with being a man, woman, or any other gender. This narrative may not completely resonate with all individuals since everyone perceives gender differently. After all, gender is socially constructed, and the production and reinforcement of gender scripts vary around the world. Cultural reinforcement of gender differences can strengthen how individuals perceive themselves, which often leads to conversations about the inequalities existent in these structures. Such conversations can lead to discomfort or feeling threatened, which can be precursors to violence. Furthermore, intimate and kinship relations can also be viewed through different cultural lenses, examining how partners are perceived and what the expectations are for each person in a relationship. Intimate partner and gender-based violence services can become more accessible by representing and raising awareness about cross-cultural definitions. And most importantly, also acting as an unbiased support system that will help individuals fight through injustices.
Thank you, Sanya, and thank you for highlighting that gender constructs are not intrinsic to all people in all places, and is rather individually and socially understood and constructed. This understanding is crucial to supporting the diversity of individuals experiencing gender-based violence. Ella, what are your thoughts?
I agree with Sonia. I think one of the biggest barriers in accessing culturally sensitive gender-based violence services is a lack of diverse representation at the services themselves. Sometimes it's difficult to have a staff diverse enough to encompass all the cultures in our community. So when a victim of abuse is looking for support services, it makes sense that they would feel more comfort seeking help from someone that understands their culture and their beliefs and their understanding of gender and gender roles and their chosen lifestyle. I think that by actively encouraging diversity among staff and educators in gender-based violence services, it's going to be a first step in trying to reduce this barrier in our community.
You both raise very important point here. The reality of everyone's experience is unique, both in the circumstances, but also in the way that their culture and past experiences inform how they perceive the situation. Really, if service providers are not addressing the cultural context of survivors, they're not acting in a way that is truly trauma-informed. Outside of formal agency supports, how can women actively support other women who are victims, survivors of gender-based violence? Sarah, let's start with you.
There are many things women and even youth can do to end gender-based violence and help support the campaign and women it serves, starting with listening to others and being open to learning from experiences that aren't your own. We all have something to share, and it's important to understand this. We must also believe those who speak out against violence and speak out ourselves, especially if we think something isn't right. Many survivors are hesitant or even frightful to come forward due to lack of support and fear that their stories may not be heard or taken seriously. We need to advocate for a system that does not focus on protecting abusers, and we must intervene when it is safe for us to do so. Even something as simple as knowing the numbers of your local shelters can make a big difference. It would also be great if more women and youth would consider giving their time to an organization such as NFF Youth.
Thank you, Sarah. You're so right. Everyone does have a role to play, even in just being prepared to support someone in their time of need. Ella, what are your thoughts?
I think the best way women can support other women is by making sure that they are believed and that they know that we stand with them. Too often women are afraid to come forward with their experiences of trauma and abuse because they're worried that when they come out that people won't believe them. By making sure that women know that they have the support from other women, I think more people will feel comfortable coming forward and they'll feel empowered to come forward.
Ensuring that the experiences of survivors are heard, seen, understood, and taken seriously is so incredibly crucial in order to provide support, care, and protection. Accounts of victim blaming or pitting the severity of one experience against another is not survivor-focused dialogue and does not in any way enable a satisfactory standard of care. Solidarity between women and other allies will serve to amplify voices, validate experiences, and pave the way for healing. What role do you think men can play? Ella?
I think that men can help by participating in events like this one, 16 Days of Activism, or even just by actively participating in conversations about gender-based violence. Too often, gender-based violence is perceived as a woman's problem. By encouraging men to participate in these conversations, we're switching the narrative from a women's problem to a societal problem. Language does end up mattering. In addition, I think the experiences of gender-based violence is shaped by an underrepresentation of women in government institutions. Most gender-based violence is directed towards women, and most of the policies and laws that are created surrounding this issue are created and voted on by men. I think that this provides a barrier from policies and laws being created that truly addresses the issues surrounding gender-based violence and women that experience it. Men in political arenas need to acknowledge this and reserve ample space for diverse female voices in these processes.
I agree. The dialogue for so long has been primarily focused on how women and girls can protect themselves from perpetrators of violence, but much less on perpetrators themselves and preventing violence in the first place, right? And like you said, increasing the number of diverse female voices and those with lived experiences at decision-making tables will actually ensure that policy reflects the true needs of survivors. What do you think, Sierra?
I think it's important for men to lend their voices to campaigns to prevent violence against women and to be an example to their peers and help change the perceptions of masculinity. This can be uncomfortable and unsettling, but it is so important. Men can and should change traditional gender roles and take on equal share of household tasks and childcare responsibilities within the home, modeling for the next generation of young men. Caregivers, including men, should teach and care for girls and boys equally, and really think about how they respond to expressions of emotions and interests from children of different genders, respecting them as individuals and not in terms of compliance with gender stereotypes.
That's a good point, Sierra. The role men play within their own families can really help to change outcomes for young men and women and work preventatively to end gender-based violence. Sanya, how do you think that experiences of gender-based violence are shaped by intersections of social identity and systems of oppression?
In the case of gender-based violence, there's a clear abuse of power which leads to violence. Instead of exhibiting equality in a relationship, normalized and harmful standards associated with concepts of race, gender, sexuality, ability, etc., lead to the justification of exploitation of one partner over another and potentially to violence. Specifically, toxic masculinity reinforces the need for men to be dominant, muscular, and to exhibit other masculine traits, whereas definitions of femininity reinforce that women should be submissive and emotional. Toxic masculinity often prevents men from showing their feelings, which represses their emotions and further increases the chances of diverting that frustration onto someone else. As these traits continue to be practiced and taught to members of society, the behaviors and actions associated with these traits also become societal expectations. This normalizes power differences between genders. Thus, these exact power differences are what gives certain people a dangerous assumption that they can abuse their power, or that people possess only a limited amount of power and should remain compliant. Within this dynamic, other aspects of social identity, such as racial inequalities, heteronormativity, wealth gaps, etc., are also part of the picture. Each of these exhibit the same cycle of power discrepancies caused by unequal societal expectations that are reproduced and reinforced. So intersectionality, or the connection of all these dimensions of identity, demonstrates that all these elements combined create complex assumptions of power. This can create further internal conflicts between individuals in their relationships. Overall, intersections of social identity and systems of oppression allow people with assumed power to stay in power, and those that are at the bottom of this loop continue to suffer. As this continues, normalized behavior, especially men being powerful and women conforming to their abuse of power, facilitates a cycle of abuse that is difficult to break.
Tanya, that's a great way of explaining intersectionality of identity and how it often plays out in current systems of power. One's relative and subjective experiences of privilege or marginalization related to their various identities surely plays out in way they interact in their relationships, for better or for worse. For women, internalizing and accepting the normalized characteristics of toxic masculinity in their partners affects how they might respond to, seek support for, and act against the violence or abuse they may be experiencing. This often negatively impacts their own personal outcomes. On that note, we're coming to an end of our panel discussion, and I want to take a moment to thank our panelists today for sharing their insights and ideas, and our audience for tuning in and wanting to learn more. NFF Youth continues to play an active role in the 16 Days campaign, and we encourage you to do the same. Join us to build a world free from gender-based violence. Thank you.